This is Betsy Jensen, and you are listening to Unstoppable Body and Mind, episode 116 Emotional Self Connection with Molly Claire.
In this podcast, we learn to upgrade our brain and understand the power of our thoughts to heal and to create the results we want in our life. Become the person in control of your healing and make peace with your life. Become unstoppable, body and mind.
Hello, welcome. We have a special guest today. This is Molly Claire, and she has agreed to be on my podcast. I was recently recording with her, and some of the things she said really connected with me and with this work. And I think that you'll find her perspective helpful. And so welcome, Molly. I'll just get to it. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and talk about this important work of really improving our well-being, right? It's a big deal.
Yes. 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 And Molly, you specifically work with, why don't you speak a little to
Yeah.
your expertise?
Yeah. So I'm a master life and business coach. I actually started my coaching business focusing on helping women navigating through the challenges of motherhood. And I did that work, and I wrote a book really focused on helping women through that. And then as I continued to build, I actually started helping other coaches to be able to build those meaningful businesses where they're impacting people's lives. And so at this point, what I focus on is it's twofold. One is continuing to help coaches, especially in my Masterful Coach Foundations program. I help coaches really build those foundational pieces of their business. And I know that's kind of vague, but it's a lot of the emotion stuff that we'll talk about today. It's the strategy, it's the mindset, it's all of that. So that's one piece of my business. And the other piece of my business is an advanced certification for coaches that work specifically with motherhood and family life. And honestly, it's like that is kind of the topical focus. But as I mentioned to you, within that program, the foundation of that work that I do with those coaches is a lot of emotional self-connection work. And so those are the two things I do. And I'm just really passionate about empowering women and helping them to be stronger personally. So
That's amazing. Molly, could you tell me a little bit more what you mean about emotional self-connection? I think that's what really caught my eye or my ear when we were talking. And I think we're using very similar principles, maybe with some different vocabulary when you
I
talk
think
about
so.
the focus on emotions. I think you're also talking about, the focus on the nervous system, which involves emotional states.
Yeah, definitely. So I kind of going back, because I know your listeners are there's a broad range of circumstances of all of you listening, right? But you're all here because you want better well-being. Probably some of you have chronic pain, that you're working with Betsy to get help on. And so as I'm sharing about this, I want to kind of make sure this is relevant to all of you listening. So as I mentioned, when I started out with my business, really working with women in motherhood, again, the topic was motherhood. But what I really found is that where my clients would struggle is by so often taking care of everything else around them, everyone else around them, and not attending to their needs, in part because they didn't even know what they were.
Yes, yes. And everyone listening probably resonates to that in some degree, Maybe not
Yes.
even being women, but like if you found your way to
Yes.
my podcast, one of the hallmark signs of chronic pain, I don't know if you knew this, is that sense of devotion, wanting other people to feel good before you can feel good, really feeling like you can't really rest. Those are
Which
survival
is
states.
Yes, which is why I think so often, and I keep speaking to women because that's so the population that I work with.
Yeah.
But women in navigating motherhood often have, chronic pain and chronic illness. And it's not just because, oh, it's a stressful thing to have, kids. It's not that. It's how we're navigating it, right? And this is not to bring a judgment. It's not like, oh, well,
Yes.
because it's hard. It is. It's a lot, right?
It
And we're
is.
all figuring it out, and we're all doing the things that we think are in our best interest and
Yes.
everyone's best interest. And we just don't know what we don't know, right?
Yes,
Along the way.
exactly. We're
Yeah.
just really taught to serve and to give, and often that can
Yes.
be at our own expense.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and so this kind of basic information on, how to
Yeah.
manage your emotions, to label your
Mm-hmm.
emotions, to have some
Mm-hmm.
self-connection,
Mm-hmm.
that is such a foundation to be successful with motherhood, with business, with
Yeah.
coaching, with everything. Because you
Absolutely
can't give
everything.
from an empty cup. But so many people, I mean, like you said, we're well-meaning, and it's not like a character flaw at all. But for
No.
me, like personally, from the minute my children were born, and I was also a working mom, I already felt like I wasn't a good mom in some way. So I was starting from this scarcity and starting from this, and I was well-meaning, but I was putting so much pressure on myself. So I
Yeah.
always felt like I was being chased by a tiger.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so my cortisol was up, and that's when my digestive system had problems, and that's what led me to this work. But
Yes.
um, it was things that I could change by changing my thoughts, by changing my stress level, by changing my emotions.
Yes.
And because most people around me were like, why don't you take a break? Why don't you slow down? Most clients,
Right.
their husbands are telling them, why don't you relax more? But it's like, we don't even know how at some point. We don't even know what
No.
we like to do anymore, right?
I don't, and for me, I at least can say, I don't even know that I knew what that meant.
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't think, I don't think I understood because, you know, kind of going back, I'd love to share kind of these like almost like two different phases of my own experience and how it's really helped me to do this work with, with women in their business and in their personal life, um, because, so back when I was really focusing on directly with clients in their life of motherhood, when I wasn't, working with coaches, um, I was really teaching that piece of helping them to separate themselves as a person from everyone else in their family and their life,
Mhm.
right? And really attend to um their own energy levels, and it feels to me like that was like step one for me in all of this, and it was a big deal, right? So it's kind of like first step is, how can I separate me from everyone else, and how can I make sure I'm taking good care of me,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
And so, what's that?
Oh, sorry, prioritizing that, right? Just like
Yes.
that has
Yes.
put your own oxygen mask on first.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for me, it took like probably like many of your clients and like many of us, it took me getting chronic fatigue syndrome to
Oh,
be able to even see that things needed to be changed within me.
yeah.
Because we think, right, if we just are a little more organized and we're a little better at what we're doing,
Yes.
and if we can just finagle our way into fixing our life, then everything will be fixed. And what we don't realize is that we're trying to fix all these things in our lives to make sure that we can know that we're worthwhile, that we're worthy, that we're okay.
Yes. Yes, because that is that
Yeah.
survival state of flight.
Yes.
And it is a safety response. Like, I will feel safe once I have all
Yes.
of this validation and these things are checked off my list and everyone I know is happy. But
Yes.
until then, I can't, is the other
Yes.
side of the coin. And that
Yes.
is living in a survival state. That means your digestion might be turned off all of the time, like mine was, or
Yeah, and like mine was
or
too.
chronic fatigue. Often that is that state of freeze where you're immobilized literally at that nervous system
Mhm.
level, and it's not a conscious choice, and you can't
Mhm.
just think your way
Mhm.
out of it and strategize your way out of it.
Mhm.
Sometimes if you're putting that much pressure on yourself, your nervous system just reacts more. So,
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Oh, wow.
So,
I didn't even know you had chronic fatigue.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So, fast forward a little bit, and I was able to heal from chronic fatigue. I was able to attend to some things within me.
Yes.
So then we'll like fast forward to kind of phase two, which is a lot of the work I do now. As I was building my business, I had a bit of a breakdown.
Mm.
And the reason this came about, and I'll share this, this is especially applicable to any of your clients who do a lot of thought work, a lot of belief work, a lot of cognitive work to make our life better.
Yeah.
And I think there is a tremendous amount of value in changing the way we view the world, in looking at our belief system, in really being aware of our thoughts. It's so powerful. That changed my life for the better. And I know it's changed, thousands of people that I've known and worked with.
Yeah.
And I know for me personally that I was using those cognitive tools and thought works and belief. And those of you listening, if this is kind of like, I'm sure that your audience is somewhat versed in this, but I don't want any of you to feel like lost as I'm talking about this.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'll keep
Yeah.
it, kind of
Yeah.
reined in.
Yeah.
But essentially, I'll give you just a simple example. So let's say that I have a relationship in my life, and maybe that relationship isn't working for me at a personal level. Maybe I have some needs in that relationship that are not being met.
Mhm.
And so sometimes one way that we try to remedy this, and this is what I'm referring to as like thought work or looking at how we're viewing the situation, is yes, the way I'm thinking about this situation can change it for the positive, change it for the negative. It will impact it, right? However, where we get into trouble is if I start using what we would call positive thinking or something along those lines to say, it's okay that this person doesn't return my call. I'm okay. I can validate me. And while these can be positive things to think and helpful in some ways,
Yeah.
what happened, and you'll have to just like bring this in if it's getting too out there or whatever in this concept, but what we sometimes do is we can start to try to think positively, and by so doing
Mm.
we are really railroading over things that are important to us,
Yeah.
emotional needs that we have,
Yeah.
and sometimes trying to railroad over even our nervous system in certain instances.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. We can try to thought work our way out of things,
Yes.
and that can actually be more dysregulating to our nervous system, but we don't,
Yes.
but then we're just thinking, well, then I just need to change my thoughts more. Like, why can't I just change these thoughts? Or part of me even knows that. And then it's like my body reacts differently.
Yes. Yeah. That dissonance between, okay, my brain sees this, but my body's here. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And the other part of that is like when we're talking about emotions, like it's kind of like that fawn response when you're
mhm,
just I'll just be happy about whatever the circumstances are. And so anger can get repressed, and a lot
mhm,
of times in this work people have repressed some anger, and they haven't stood up for
mhm.
their boundaries. And so it doesn't mean that you can just have positive thoughts and be a pushover all the time. Like, part of this work
Right.
is having all the range of emotions and having healthy anger when it's appropriate, which prompts you to set boundaries or to, what
Yeah.
I mean, right? Like, validate your own
Yes.
needs. So in
Or
a
change some circumstances in your life
yes,
that aren't working for you that you don't want.
exactly. Yeah, a
Hmm.
lot of chronic pain actually has
Hmm.
to do with feeling trapped.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
it's really strange,
Yes.
but like many times when the circumstance changes, people's chronic pain resolves.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that another thing I want to say, going right along with what you were saying about a fawn response, and this piece is something I learned from you, Betsy. I don't remember if this was in the interview for my podcast or when you were teaching in my community, but talking about that the flight response often looks like that achieving and doing.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
that's the direction I go with it. So it's like, if I had these situations in my life that I didn't like, I would think, okay, like, I just need to like change the way I think about this, and I just need to do more. And so then I go into over functioning. I'm really
Yes.
in flight mode in that
Mhm.
sense, which is
Yes.
not healthy for
Right.
us.
It's like the tiger chasing you all the time.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I had this really crazy experience where I really had uh I it was like a complete breakdown. It was like everything, and it was like breakdown one was the chronic fatigue. Okay, that was it. And then I kind of healed from that. And then this other was really reaching this point in my life that thankfully really forced me to see that I never in my life had learned to really attend to my own emotions and understand them.
Mm.
And for me, and I know everyone, we all have such different experiences of childhood, right? And what happens.
Mhm.
And for me, I was raised by a single mom who was truly, I mean, extremely unavailable because she was trying to provide for us.
Mhm.
Amazing mom, very dedicated, would do anything to make sure we were cared for, very kind. And yet, if someone isn't there, if a child is by
Yeah.
themselves,
Yeah.
then there is no opportunity for that child to have their needs and emotions attended to.
Right.
So I know this is my personal experience, but I think everyone here or many people can relate at some level. And so fast forward a little bit and making this relevant to your audience. At this point in time, I really had to dive into doing deep work around making space and time where what self-care meant to me is it didn't mean just taking a break or connecting with friends or getting a pedicure or those fun things, but it
Mm.
really meant like paying attention to how I felt,
Yeah.
thinking about who I was, what mattered to me and what I needed. And just that deep dive into that has really resulted in me doing this work with other women, because what I found is I am not even close to alone in this.
Mm.
And women across the board, we overgive, we think of everyone else, we're caretakers, we're people pleasers.
Yes.
And what I see is that when I work with my coaches, with my clients in their business, in their personal life, and as they're helping other people, when we can really care about the human that is you,
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
is a magical internal experience that truly makes your experience of life and your well-being so much better. So this is like my
Wait,
this
I like
this
got
is my
chills.
soapbox.
I
Okay,
love
this is
it.
my soapbox. Yeah.
Yeah, I love how when we first got on together, like we follow each other's work, and then we're like, well, how exactly are we going to frame this so that it relates? And everything you said, I'm like, okay, first of all, you had chronic fatigue and healed
Mm-hmm.
from that, and did this really coming to the same place that everyone
Mm-hmm.
comes to when they start my work too. You know, your
Mm-hmm.
women are coming from a little different angle, but the work really is the same.
Yes.
Really getting in touch with what is going on with your physiology, with your emotions, with your
Yeah.
thoughts, and starting to prioritize yourself and tune
Yeah.
into yourself and
Mm-hmm.
prioritize your emotions and your emotional
Mm-hmm.
well-being.
Mm-hmm. And knowing first what that means, because
Yeah.
it's so vague, right? What does
Yeah.
that even mean? It sounds like nice on an Instagram post, but what
Yeah.
does that mean? Yeah.
Yeah, right?
And
Yeah.
so, like in the work that I do when I'm working with coaches and helping, like equipping them to be more capable as coaches to help women in their personal life and in their families, this is the work we do. I help my clients know themselves, connect with themselves,
Mhm.
draw those, put those boundaries up, stop the cycle of overgiving. And the
Mhm.
same thing with female business owners that I work with building businesses, right? Because
Yes.
it's just like a new way, a new space where we can think that we have to overgive. And
Mhm.
what's so interesting is that I think that in the business space, I find that women, there's something in us that we think we kind of need to hustle more, overwork more, overgive more. And at the same time, right, like side by side with that belief is also this idea that we won't have much money to show for it. It's
Oh,
like a really sad combination for us to have
yeah.
exist.
Oh,
So,
right. We just have so
yeah,
many like embedded beliefs, just
we do.
subconscious beliefs that, I mean, they've done studies of people that, they, if they're holding like an iced coffee, they perceive someone as more threatening. If they're holding a warm coffee, they
Mm-hmm.
perceive them as warmer, like,
So
I mean,
crazy, right?
we just have, yeah, our brain takes all these shortcuts, and
Mm-hmm.
and there's kind of this idea that we need to perform in this very masculine way of just like
Yes.
hustle and actions. But
Yep.
what you're teaching, and it sounds like, and the way that I phrase it, is like getting into that emotional alignment first, getting
Yes.
to that, regulating your emotions or slash nervous
Mm-hmm.
system,
Mm-hmm.
and then taking action from there. And you
Mm-hmm.
actually can take a lot less action, and it's so much more
Mm-hmm.
effective. Is
Mm-hmm.
that what you find too?
Oh, yeah. And I think what's interesting as you were talking, um, I was thinking about how challenging it can be sometimes for us to wrap our head around this idea that maybe everything isn't about just looking at something from a logical place. Like almost
Yeah.
like I know this isn't exactly what you're saying, but I think this is an important thing and it's like right there connected to it.
Yeah.
I was having a conversation with a colleague of mine this week about this interesting phenomenon where um when we kind of have this idea that going to our emotions to make a decision is a bad idea,
Yeah.
right? And
Right.
what you want to do is you want to be very logical and you
Right.
want to use your prefrontal cortex and your cognitive ability to make decisions. And yet, in truth, when we can first go to our like connect with ourselves, and I know like Betsy, you can see me, right? This I always do this. I put my hand right on my chest, I
Yeah.
close my eyes. That's how I kind of shut my brain down for a minute, right? And I just like or shut my head down, right? And I go and it's like, what do I need? And it is amazing how when we can change that pattern of trying to immediately go to our head to
Mhm.
instead, how can I connect, right, with my body, with myself here? That
Yeah.
not only does that immediately have that, ability to calm the nervous system, but
Yes.
it also really, I think, just allows us to connect with this inner knowing. And
Exactly.
then, right then, it's like we can have that clarity and then we can use
Yes.
the logical to complement it. But I think even
Yes.
just that one shift can be huge. But
I
it doesn't
love.
come naturally necessarily to everyone.
Right. Because we're trained to go into flight and to just, our brain goes onto that hamster wheel, and we have those spinning thoughts, and we look at everything and we overthink it. And right,
Right.
the energy behind that, you can just feel it's like this frenetic energy versus taking that moment to actually
Yes.
calm the nervous system. I mean, the science behind that actually is that the place you use your prefrontal cortex the most is not
Mhm.
in a survival state. It's in the calm state,
Mhm.
in the safe
Mhm.
state of the nervous system. So,
Mhm.
so actually connecting, you know, you could say that inner wisdom, that's what I
Mhm.
believe. I believe, even
Mhm.
your inner being, your guidance system. But even if you just think that's where you access your prefrontal cortex the
Yeah.
most, that's what
Yes.
we want. We don't want to come
Right.
from this like shut down place coming from fear, or this, what is everyone going to think coming from fear, right? Like, what are all
Yep.
the experts saying versus like, how do I feel about it? What lights
Yes.
up in my body when I have that thought? Or does it
Yeah.
tighten? Does it expand? Right? Like
Yeah.
those kind of questions.
Yeah, it's so fun to see the crossover. And I know, like when you've come and taught classes to my business, like my coaches in the business program and in the coaching mastery and advanced coaching, it's like, um, I mean, just the work that you do, I think everyone needs to know it.
Mm,
Everyone needs
I
to
think
know it. If
so
everyone
too.
understood the nervous system better, can you imagine how
Yes.
different
Right?
everyone would be and the world would be?
Yes. I mean, I think
Mhm.
of where I was 5 years ago, and I found
Mhm.
thought work, and
Yep.
that was life changing. And then I
Yes.
did more of a deep dive of emotions. I
Mhm.
studied with Bev, Erin,
Mhm.
and like
Mhm.
she's one of your colleagues and similar,
Mhm.
but like really deep diving into emotions. And then the
Mhm.
nervous system, I found that around the same time. And it
Mhm.
just gives you more vocabulary. It
Yeah.
gives you more compassion, I think, for yourself because you understand yourself as this, there's this primitive part to you that you can
Mhm.
shame and you can try to like,
Mhm.
get rid of, or you can work with it and befriend it and
Yeah.
use it as like actually greater wisdom for you.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that. It's so true. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Wow.
Well, amazing. I don't know if there's any other we might just like end
I
it with
know it's like a lot to digest, right? Yeah. I guess
yeah.
just like wherever your listeners are on, thought work, cognitive work, emotion work, chronic pain, whatever it is. I think if every one of us more often could put our hands, to our heart or any place that feels comforting and
Mhm.
just like ask ourselves what we need, that
Mm.
is like, I think it's step one to huge changes for us.
Uh, that is just, I love that tip so much because it's, you always have your hands and your body with
Mhm.
you. You can do
Mhm.
it anywhere. Just taking that
Mhm.
moment, it's becoming present, not letting the mind
Mhm.
spin out and just be in survival
Mhm.
states, but like, just like, okay, I'm here. And the more you
Mhm.
do it, don't you find that that just becomes easier and easier to access that information?
Yes, and I think also it communicates like, hey, you're worth paying attention to.
Yes,
It just
right.
communicates like, hey, I care about you. You're worth paying attention to. You're worth being attended to. And
Yes.
that's a pretty powerful message to send yourself
It
regularly.
really, really is because so
Yeah.
many of us are not very connected with our bodies. But just like
Mhm.
I was thinking, with child development, when you start to give them options and they get to choose things, and
Mhm.
you're essentially saying like you matter, your opinions matter. It
Yeah.
that same development with our bodies and our connection with ourselves.
Mhm.
So even if you're starting with just like, okay, I've never really started this, just starting with that open mind and
Mhm.
yeah, doing it more and more. Oh, I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love that
Awesome.
tip, self-connection. Um, thank you so much, Molly, for sharing that. That everything went
Yeah.
just in such a different direction than I thought. I had no idea I knew there was a lot in common, but I had no idea how much. So
Yeah. 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 Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you learned a little bit about your brain today that helps you in your life like it helped me. Please be sure and subscribe and leave a review. And of course, be sure and share this podcast with someone you know that wants an unstoppable body and mind.